for me, I've applied through KPUM actually. So the selection process for the KPUM summer internship scheme is that they will run through a series of interviews initially. So they will screen the participants, and once you successfully get past the interview stage, you'll be asked to do a couple of essays or cover letters to different firms, and then they will revert back to you within 1 month or 2 months time. Then you'll get to know your results say before April. So that's my application process. Like,
I didn't apply. Because this a zero, it's like a free labor kind of thing. Yeah, so they invited me to join a firm in somewhere in September last year. So first internship. Like initially, I didn't even want to do internship until I passed my CLP. So yeah, so they wanted me, and I stayed there for 3 months. And as for the other two, it's the usual application process where apply and get the interview. So the interview process is just speaking with the partner and also associates, and yeah, go through that. Then yeah, I got selected.
So for me, I've applied to like both of my internships by myself. So I have to fill in like forms with like basic questions and stuff, and cover letter as well as like attached CV. So it's like quite a normal process, I would say. So yeah.
Applied online, so I filled in like a form, and then I had a video interview, and then they accepted me, so I went. Yeah.
How I came across my firm was I did a lot of research. So here's a tip for all of you. If like you want to know what kind of cases that the firm does, you can actually just go on Nexus and type out the firm's name, and all the cases, the lawyer's name will come out, right? Like in like the whole cases will come out. So like that's how I got to know like what kind of like things my firm does. And I pretty much came across my firm through Instagram. I found it in the Malaysian bar website. So the job posting that area. So from there you can see. Then I went to stalk them on Instagram. I stalked them on Facebook. Stalked them everywhere. Stalked them Lexis, and then like I stalked all the partners. Oops. And then like yeah, because I'm very particular. Okay, like I need to make sure my firm is like memang good one. I can go and learn properly. So I don't want to go to simply any kind of firm, then you just sit down there, do off-school work, and then you don't learn anything at the end of the day. So what's the point? So yeah, that's how I do. So I think most importantly, in your application process, make sure you do enough research on your firm.
As for me, at both firms, the process was rather conventional. I wrote in to Lee H and also Daniel Wong, and then I had interviews with at Lee H there was only one interview, but at Daniel Wong there were two. The first one with the associates, and then the second one with the partner. The partner who is leading the corporate team. And if I'm not mistaken, if you want to do a pupillage or you want to become an associate there, then there will be another interview with both the partners, Daniel and Wong. Yeah. Why did I want to do an internship? Certainly for exposure. My first experience working in a law firm was when I first started my CLP course. In other words, when I was in my law school for the whole 3 years, it was really happy-go-lucky time lah. I didn't really do anything about I didn't bother wanting to know more about legal practice. And so it was certainly for exposure. And then at that point of time, I was quite sure, well, I wanted I wanted to know more about litigation. And fortunately, I got a position in the DR department. And then when I wanted to get a position post my exam, CLP exam, I changed my mind to look for a position in corporate practice because I wanted to know about it as well. So it's not the case that I don't like litigation, but like people say, tak kenal maka tak cinta. So I want to know more about it before I make a decision, and just so that I can say one day, dah kenal dah, tapi memang tak cinta lah. That was what I wanted to do. Yeah, it's just why Daniel Wong and why Lee H. Truth be told, I think it's just so ngam they wanted people and they needed someone to help out. So it wasn't, I didn't plan to go any specific firm, to be honest.
The reason why I want to try out the internship is that because I'm not sure whether the legal career is something I want to do. I'm pretty sure that I want to do something related to that, but I'm not sure whether how legal practice is like, and how similar is it, and how similar is it like, what you study in law school, because there's a big gap and, there's radical difference between both of them. So it's mainly about exposure, mainly to see how the legal career in practice is like. So that's my main motivation. The reason why I chose DH and Screen is because back in the UK, I've worked in a boutique firm, so it's a smaller firm, and I really want to see how a larger firm operates. So I decided to go for targeting the much larger firms in Malaysia. So yeah, it's basically about trying to put myself in different environments and to see whether I like the firm's culture or not. So I guess it's a trial and error process for me altogether, but yeah.
To be honest, the reason why I applied for an internship or like an attachment, I wanted work experience because I felt like I was going into my third year already, and I felt like I should have like I was looking at other people's profiles, in particular my friend's profile. So I saw that she had an attachment and an internship position. So I wanted to replicate that. So I figured, I'll go and find a firm to work at, because at the time it was COVID time. It was sort of like in the peak time for COVID. It was like FMCO, CMCO, a lot of MCOs going on. Then I felt like if I just applied lah, then they actually accepted me. So I felt like I could if I had like attachment experiences, maybe she would fancy me or something like that. So that was my intention. and so I went, and then I figured like I went to the firm. The firm gave me even more different experiences. So I'm very thankful for that. So yeah, I gotten a lot from the firm. So I want to thank my boss personally here. So yeah, thank you.
The interview questions that I was asked for the first one, for the first internship, I didn't got asked any questions. I was just invited to do the attachment there. But the second one is basically they will ask you questions like, what is those typical interview questions that you can get from Indeed or some job website, like what is your passion, like what greatest strength, and maybe like they ask you like how do you usually they ask you like to describe like teamwork, your version of teamwork, like how is it like. So yeah, usually are those kind of questions. But for the current job that I'm working for, the interview is quite different. When it is, the partner only asked me like where I come from, where I grew up, and she just wanted to know about me more, like personally. And really, I don't think she even asked me any questions about anything law related. Yeah. As for like the questions such as any questions related to law schools or legal studies, right? There isn't any for now. Yeah, that I've experienced. Yeah.
They asked me about my interests, so in which area I would like to try out, and so I told them there were three partners. So I said litigation, and then they asked me if I had any preference on the area of law, meaning like land law, land matters, corporate matters, commercial matters. I remember I remember in answering that I said I was naive. I said public law, but I knew very well at that point of time in Malaysia, firms don't practice exclusively on public law, unlike in the UK chambers. So that was it at PH. And then at Daniel Wong, questions, I think it surrounded more on why I wanted to try corporate. And yeah, I actually told my boss so that I want to know more about it. Because I haven't tried it out yet. And then also they asked about my personal matters because I'm not from KL, so they asked me about my arrangement on accommodation, all that. So yeah, it was a more casual one when I was in the interview with Daniel Wong.
Despite my internship being most of it like during the pandemic and I had to work from home, I actually did guidance. So like I said, I already did research, and it is actually a very conducive environment for an intern to go there and to learn, because the partners there, the lawyers there, and as well as the pupils, they are always so receiving, and you can ask any questions. You don't have to be scared. You can come out of your own shell, and they are always challenging you to do better. Because when I did my internship, I was just in my third year, so I didn't know how to do drafting at all, and it was pretty much my very first internship. So I think it was like during my first week, they're like, okay, so can you draft this affidavit? I'm like, oh, what's that? I was like, I felt so dumb at the time, and I didn't know what to do. And then one of the people was like, okay, it's okay, I'll teach you. He gave me the drafted affidavit already, and then this is how affidavit, and this is the purpose of the affidavit. And after that, I started doing more draftings, like statements, opinion letters to clients, and slowly as time goes by, they start trusting you more with work, because when you show that you want to learn, they will give you more. And so another thing that I feel interns should have is the willingness to ask for work, because because we are interns, right? Sometimes our bosses might not give us as much work as we expect. For example, maybe they just give you, okay, go research on this, go research on that, then habis. But then you really want to know the hands-on, you want to get to that drafting. Drafting is not easy, in learning how to draft and all these kind of things. So I think my boss was so kind. After every single draft that I do, he will come and check my work, and he will take the time. Doesn't matter if it takes up to half an hour. He will just sit down beside me, and he will pinpoint all my mistakes and all my you shouldn't write this way. You should write like this. This is not the format. Where's your page numbering? Some of them they're so particular. Why is this not justified? But I'm just so thankful for having kind of boss at my firm, because I really did learn a lot. I really, really did. And they're also very particular on your grammar. It's like, you don't know your past tense? So it's like, yeah, but they really challenge you to do better. Yeah.
So I feel like the partners and associates were really nice and understanding, because they know that I've just completed my first year. So obviously I don't really have that, knowledge and stuff. But they're very nice, and they're very generous in sharing their insights and knowledge with us, the interns, as well. When I was interning at ASME as associate, the Dato ASME actually would organize group session with us even though like he's busy and like he has a very packed schedule, like he was trying to make sure that like he would share like his knowledge on about like the legal industry as well. So I felt like I really learned a lot from the partners and associates, and like they made sure that like I was not afraid to ask for help if I struggle with any of my tasks, even though it was like all virtual internship. But I feel like the help and the guidance that I got was really adequate and sufficient. So I'm very grateful for that.
So actually, I think I kind of said a lot in my introductory, and then I guess they gave me I did typical office boy duties. So I tried to I served the clients. I tried to make my boss. I try to ease the burden of my boss in whatever way possible that I can. So if he's stressed out, he has a lot of things to do. I try to find ways to kind of make that less stressful for him. So in return, he gave me an opportunity to help him in the court case, like actual court case. So like I said earlier, because of what because he gave me, I was trying to read his cases that he has done before. So I went in there as a student, and so he knew I was going in there as a student. So I was going there to learn from him. So in a way, he was my master lah. So I learned a lot from him, and then every time he has a court case or court hearing, I would sit in and then listen, and I would help with the setups and then help them carry luggages, help them arrange things, and then in terms of research, I think that one is more. It's more kind of a own self thing. Like the book is there, he will give you the book, then you read it on your own time, and then he'll ask you questions based on what you have learned from his cases. So that was what I did. So yeah, that is pretty much what I did. I went there as a student so I went there to learn cases and help with the menial tasks, carrying luggages, office boy duties, and court hearings. Try to assist him. Some form of questions to ask the witness on the stand. I try to help with that, but my questions were sometimes a bit lacking. But I tried my best to provide questions, if possible, to help him. So yeah, overall, I'd say my job was just I do anything to help ease their burden. So yeah, thank you.
I think as for me, it's my experience is slightly different. I'm so sorry, because of how my internship is virtual. So you don't get to work alongside lawyers every day, and because of that, I guess there's lesser so-called office boy duties, and there are more hands-on work that you get to do. So maybe I can split it into two parts, and firstly talk about my LeeH virtual internship first. So in LeeH, I think the partners and associates are very willing to give me work. I do a lot of legal research, so I have to do like legal research every single day, and they always expect it within that day. So you have to be very, very quick to find your research, and that's very difficult for me, especially not being familiar with Malaysian case law and the court hierarchy system. So that's very difficult. I think one good thing about my department, I'm under Mr. Andrew Chew's department. So he wants the interns to present the research once you're done, and he will ask you questions when you are doing the research. So at times it might be very intimidating because you might find yourself not covering this topic or not knowing this stuff, and he will actually scold you if you are not well versed with your material. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to learn, good lesson to learn as well. So being able to research comprehensively and answer questions on the spot. So that's one, that's legal research. The second one is drafting. I'm very fortunate my associate gave me the opportunity to draft submissions, court papers, court orders on the second week even. So yeah, the drafting process is also very rigorous because the the associates expect you to deliver, right? Even though you are an intern, you're expected to act like a first year associate. And I think that is the so-called training process that forces you to step out of your comfort zone. So yeah, that's drafting. And apart from that, I think one interesting task that I've picked up in LeeH is that I get to identify or prepare like a list of questions from the affidavits, from the witness statements, from the court papers, and to see what sort of questions can we prompt the other side's witness. So in the course of cross-examination. So that's very interesting. So because you get to see what are the loopholes in this particular witness argument, what are the lacking of evidence in this particular person's statement. So yeah, that is what I usually do in LeeH. So for screen, I'm only at my second week in screen. So I don't really have a lot to do at the moment. But what I've done so far is mainly research as well, a lot of research, but the deadline is much more longer than what I've given in LeeH. And I think one interesting thing that I've not been exposed to when I'm in LeeH is translation. And I realize translation is a very, very tedious thing to do, especially when I'm not well versed in Malay. Like imagine a 100-page course paper and you have to translate everything to Malay. I cannot do that within like one day. I always need like 3 to 4 days, and then the associate always revert back to me with all the rate marks in the entire document. So yeah, I guess that's a good learning process. But translation, that's one. And the other one, which is very interesting, is because all the court hearings right now are virtual. So the way Screen does it is you have to prepare presentation slides for the Court of Appeal and Federal Court judges. So I'm very fortunate to be able to help with a federal court submission, and the associate wanted me to come up with a presentation slide outlining the written submission and gist. And yeah, that's very interesting because you get to distill the arguments from a 100-page course paper and to make it as succinct as possible for the judges to exactly know what are the things that you want to submit. But yeah, that's what I usually do in Screen for now. So yeah.
In ASME and Associates, it was actually like a free system internship. Like unlike Screen, it was more like a structured internship. So I was distributed to like dispute resolution department for Screen, but in ASME I was allowed to like just approach any associates from any departments which I'm interested to work in. So I mainly chose to work for associates from M&A department. So I feel like M&A is a pretty famous area, and I know a lot of my peers who would want to delve into M&A. And I feel like M&A is a thing that usually big law firms do M&A, and I think that it's a very good area to try out and explore. But I think it might be quite competitive, since I know like a lot of my friends, like they are interested in M&A, and because M&A, like they say like it's good money and all that stuff. But for dispute resolution, like I feel like actually because I applied for intellectual property in Screen, but I didn't get it. I got dispute resolution instead. So like I'm a first year student, so I'm open to like different options and stuff. So I didn't mind dispute resolution anyways. So like I did work similar to like what Kasen's doing as well, like help with the submission, research, and all that stuff. So it was quite interesting for me. I feel like it was my plan to do the bar in the UK. So like I feel like dispute resolution was like a good area for me to explore. But I think like obviously like one thing that I feel like I'm lack of is the ability to converse in like Malay, and I struggle a lot. I realize how it's very important to like brush up my Malay. Because like in ASME, I had to basically like call like the government, like to speak to the government department and stuff like that, and I have to converse in Malay, and I really struggled a lot. So like that's something that I really need to work on, and I realized that I feel like it's the same for dispute resolution as well, because like my mentor was like saying how important Malay is in dispute resolution area department. So I feel like the two areas that I get exposure in, I think they're both really good areas for junior lawyers or even interns to try out, to just explore and stuff. So yeah.
See, my experience so far, it gives me a very holistic overview as to on the legal practice, because previously I was in litigation doing contentious work. Now I'm doing corporate non-contentious work. But now Daniel and Wong, we focus more on M&A, subsidiary matters, not so much on initial public offering, IPO matters. So that said, I think it still gives me a very holistic overview on legal practice, meaning like both contentious and non-contentious work. I know that some of our friends may have specific interests in very specific areas of law, like IP, employment, construction, or tax. I do not. So if you have such a preference, you may consider applying to that very specific department of that firm to know what they are doing. I stand corrected, but if I'm not mistaken, lawyers in these very specialized departments, they do both contentious and non-contentious work. They do litigation, dispute resolution, and also they do advisory. They also play an advisory role. So you may consider that. If you really don't like research, then maybe you can consider doing corporate, because I don't know if other speakers here, they agree with me. No, because so far I haven't done much research I'm into my fifth month. I haven't done much research, not as to the extent as I did in litigation. So yeah.
So I'm in corporate department. Yeah, since my first, all three of my like my first two internships and my current job now are all in corporate. And the first two, there's a little mix of both, but like in dispute resolution, you have there is more research work for dispute resolution department, but there is like there are quite a big chunk of research as well for my team, at least. Yeah, for corporate.
Interestingly, I feel like my firm is not like any kind of like typical firm, because we did a lot of other things that not what a usual law firm would do. Like we had, because it was during the pandemic and lockdown, so we had like book club sessions. Like we would literally read a book, one book a week, and then we would have a session to like exchange our views and thoughts on the book. And then we had a knowledge exchange session every Friday after work at like 5:30 p.m. We have knowledge exchange session. You can pick any topic you like, anything that that strikes your heart. For example, like sports law, you can give a whole presentation on sports law if you like. Then we have mock trials as well. And so I think one of the most important skill that I learned throughout my internship would be drafting. Yes, because I learned a lot. Like, trust me, my English is not good, and like I did so many mistakes and like so many all the formalities. I just had no idea at all. But this law firm has literally taught me everything about drafting that I needed to know. So during my fourth year, when I took my CLP subjects, like I didn't have any trouble at all, like going through the drafting and stuff. Another thing I learned is advocacy skills. We did online mock trials, like I think about 2 or 3 within the span of 3 months. Yeah, so you get to know the whole flow of the trial. How to ask questions during cross-examinations, examinations in chief. All these are important skills that you need to know as well as a lawyer when you become one day. So yeah, I think those are one of my most important skills, besides brushing up on my English, because my boss has also pushed me to do like articles write articles and do infographics and stuff like that. So there's many more skills that I can say lah, but these are just one of the most prominent skills that I took from my law firm.
Well, for me, I say because previously I said learning how to cooperate with others was very important. So I learned how to value other people's time. Depending on the circumstance, sometimes like my boss, he because if I did not experience this attachment student position, I wouldn't know how much things they were handling, because from the outset, you look at someone, you don't know what they're actually doing. You look at them doing this and doing that, delegating tasks, but you don't actually know how much, what the burden is, how many things they are doing at one time, at a day. So I figured that out. So I guess one skill that I've learned that I'm still trying to improve would be learning how to value other people's time over my own, depending on the priority of the task at hand. So if the court case is very, DESA is very important, it's coming, it's coming soon. Something has to be done. I prioritize on that over whatever it is that I wanted to do personally in the firm. So that was one skill that I feel is very valuable to have learned. So from that, naturally, I also learned how to sort of, put myself in another lawyer's shoe, even as a student. Even if I'm not a lawyer, I learned how to put myself in their shoe. So I got to see from different perspectives. Previously, as a student, you sort of just study, you look at the law from your own perspective. So they have their own perspective, and I got to learn how to look from that perspective as well. So I'd say all in all, one important skill that I learned from the firm would be learning how to value other people's time. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so basically, as a paralegal, you are full-time staff and you get the perks like SOCSO, EPF, those kind of thing. But then, most importantly, you get more responsibility. And I think the boss wouldn't mind to scold you or when you do something wrong. And yeah, especially when you do something wrong, they won't, nobody will scold anyone if they have done nothing wrong. Okay. But so far I haven't experienced that. But I've seen someone experience that. And then the other difference that I can think of is a lot more work. Like, I don't know if it's firm specific or team specific, but during my internship in the previous two firms, I'm only assigned to work until sometimes maximum until like 8 o'clock. Then I can clock out and go home. But right now, as a paralegal, you gotta work like weekends, weekdays, no time limit. Just work, just get the things done. Yeah, I think it's more stressful as compared to an internship, but I believe there's more to come, especially when we move on to the next stage of our career.
Being a paralegal, you would be treated as though you were a pupil. Just that you, if you are in litigation, you will not be having the standing to go to court. But the things that you will be assigned to do, the tasks that you will be assigned to complete, would be very much similar to those tasks that will be assigned to a pupil, I guess. Because when I was at DH, I was together with two pupils in a team, and then legal tasks, meaning research, drafting, administrative tasks, preparing bundle, service of documents when there's when it is very urgent, and then also sometimes you will need to liaise with the court officers or attending client meetings. all these things are quite similar to what a pupil would be doing. The same goes to what I'm doing now in a corporate and commercial team.